For 300 years, humanity had pointed its greatest machines at the stars and listened. Radio telescopes the size of cities sat in deserts and on the dark side of the moon. Scientists spent their entire lives waiting for a single beep, a single pattern, anything that would prove they were not alone in the universe. They heard nothing, just the cold static of empty space. The greatest minds on Earth debated why. Perhaps life was rare. Perhaps intelligent creatures always destroyed themselves before they could reach the stars. Perhaps the universe was simply too big, too old, and too empty for anyone to find anyone else. They called this mystery the Fermi Paradox, and it haunted humanity like a ghost that would not leave. But humanity was wrong about one thing. They were not alone. They had never been alone. In the year 2187, a woman named Doctor sat in the control room of the Lunar Deep Space Array. This was the largest listening station ever built, buried deep in a crater on the moon where no Earth noise could interfere. She had worked there for 20 years, and in all that time, she had found nothing. That night she found something strange. It was not a signal. It was the opposite of a signal. A perfect sphere of absolute silence, 4.7 light-years across, surrounding the star closest to Earth. Every other part of space had background noise. Radiation from old stars, echoes from the birth of the universe, random static from 1,000 sources. But this sphere had nothing. Perfect silence. Perfect darkness. Something was hiding there. Something was actively blocking all signals from getting out. Doctor reported her finding. Within a month, every space agency on Earth confirmed it. The silence was real. It was artificial, and it was very, very old. Humanity did what humanity always did when faced with the unknown. They reached out to touch it. It took another 40 years to develop faster-than-light communication. Not travel, not yet, but communication through quantum-entangled particles that ignored the speed of light. When the system was ready, humanity sent its first message toward the silent sphere. The message was simple. We are here, we come in peace, we wish to talk. The response came in 6 hours. It did not come from the silent sphere. It came from everywhere else. Thousands of signals hit Earth's receivers at the same moment. Thousands of different languages, different formats, different species, all saying the same thing. The messages were coordinates, instructions, and one repeated warning. Welcome, young ones. Remain quiet, remain still. Do not attract its attention. Humanity had expected to find one alien civilization, maybe two. Instead, they had found an entire galaxy full of life. The Galactic Concord, they called themselves, an alliance of species that had existed for millions of years. They had been watching humanity since the first radio broadcasts leaked into space. They had been waiting for humanity to develop faster-than-light communication before making contact. And they were afraid. Earth's governments united faster than they ever had in history. A single ambassador was chosen to speak for all of humanity. Her name was Wei, and she was 63 years old, a diplomat who had spent her life ending wars and building bridges between enemies. Now she would build a bridge between Earth and the stars. The Concord sent a ship. It was small, elegant, and completely silent. No engine noise, no radiation, no heat signature. It moved through space like a whisper. The pilot was a creature called a being with wings like silk and eyes that held deep sadness. She did not speak. She only gestured for Ambassador to follow. The journey took 3 days. The ship traveled through something they called folded space, a way of moving that left no trace, no trail, no sound. When they arrived at their destination, Ambassador understood why. Station Harmony floated in the shadow of a dying red dwarf star. The star was so dim, so cold, that it was almost invisible against the blackness of space. The station itself was ancient, older than human civilization, older than the dinosaurs. It had been built to be hidden, to be forgotten, to be safe. Inside, Ambassador found the Concord assembly, 12,000 species, 12,000 different forms of life, creatures of crystal and light, beings of living metal, entities that existed as clouds of gas or fields of energy, all of them gathered in one place, all of them silent. A creature called an elder spoke first. It was made of light that had been somehow frozen into a solid form, and its voice was like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. "Young ones," it said, "you have done a dangerous thing, you have spoken loudly. You have sent signals into the dark. You must learn to be quiet now or you will die, all of you, your entire species, your entire world." Ambassador asked the question that every human wanted to ask. "Why? What are you afraid of?" The assembly did not answer with words. They answered with images. A hologram appeared in the center of the chamber. It showed a galaxy map, beautiful and vast, filled with the light of 1 billion stars. Then the image changed. Vast sections of the map went dark. Hundreds of star systems, thousands of worlds, millions of species, all of them gone, all of them silent. "The Devourer," the elder whispered. "It has no name that can be spoken. It has no form that can be understood. It lives in the spaces between dimensions. It feeds on energy, on signals, on noise. When a civilization grows too loud, when it attracts its attention, it comes. And when it comes, nothing survives." Ambassador stared at the dark spaces on the map. So many worlds, so many peoples, all gone. "How long has this been happening?" she asked. 3 million of your years," the elder replied. "Perhaps longer. We do not know when it first appeared. We only know that it hunts, and we have learned to hide." The hologram changed again. It showed the galactic core, the bright center of the Milky Way where stars were packed so close together that the sky would be filled with light. And there, moving between those stars, was something that made Ambassador's heart stop. It had no shape that made sense. It was darkness that moved. It was emptiness that hungered. It was bigger than worlds, older than stars, and it was moving slowly through the galaxy, feeding on anything that made too much noise. "This is why the galaxy is quiet," the pilot said, speaking for the first time. "This is why we hide. This is why you must hide too." Ambassador looked at the creature on the hologram. She looked at the 12,000 species cowering in the shadow of a dying star. She thought about Earth, about her children, about all of humanity's dreams of reaching the stars. And she realized that everything was about to change. The conquered assembly gave humanity 1 week to decide its future, 1 week to choose between joining the silent galaxy or facing the devourer alone. Ambassador Wei spent that week learning everything she could about the rules that governed life among the stars. The rules were simple: stay quiet, stay hidden, stay small, never grow too bright, never speak too loud, never hope for anything more than survival. The elders taught her the technical details. No weapons that released energy above a certain level, no ships that left radiation trails, no cities that glowed too bright against the darkness of space. Everything had to be dim, cold, and silent. Everything had to blend into the background noise of the universe. "We have perfected the art of hiding," the eldest explained. "Its crystalline body barely glowed, saving energy, keeping quiet. Our ships fold space without leaving traces. Our worlds are shielded to contain all signals. Our weapons are limited to simple kinetic force. Anything more would attract attention." Ambassador asked about the species that had been destroyed. She wanted to understand what they had done wrong. The ambassador, whose name was something like in human sounds, showed her the records. Thousands of years of history. Thousands of civilizations that had risen, grown loud, and been silenced forever. "They were the first we have records of," said. Her wings folded tight against her body, a sign of sorrow among her people. "They were builders, great builders. They constructed stations around stars, harvesting energy directly from the light. Beautiful, brilliant, and very, very bright." The hologram showed massive structures circling suns, drinking in power, glowing with captured light. Then it showed the devourer arriving. The structures went dark one by one. The lasted 3 days before it too fell silent. The singing worlds were next. They were a species that communicated through radio waves, filling the space around them with music and stories and laughter. They believed the universe should be filled with song. Paused. The devourer heard their song. It came from across the galaxy. It took them less than a year to fall silent. More examples followed. The Empire of Endless Dawn, which had tried to build a civilization across 100 star systems. The Quantum Collective, which had experimented with forms of energy that screamed across dimensions. The Children of Light, who had the stars and built temples that gathered sunlight into brilliant beams pointed at the sky. All gone, all silent, all food for the thing that hunted in the dark. How many? Ambassador asked. Her voice was steady, but her hands shook. 17,000 civilizations that we know of, replied. Perhaps many more that we never knew. The galaxy was once full of light and noise and life. Now it is full of us, the quiet ones, the survivors. Ambassador spent hours walking through Station Harmony, meeting the species that had chosen silence over death. She found the massive creatures like living mountains who had once built cities that touched the clouds. Now they lived in small caves, never speaking above a whisper. She met the beings of pure energy who had once shone like stars. Now they dimmed themselves to nearly nothing, barely visible, barely alive. She found a species with no name, creatures so dedicated to silence that they had stopped using language entirely. They communicated through touch and gesture only, afraid that even thought might somehow be too loud. This is not living, Ambassador said to the conquered leaders. This is slow death. You have survived for 3 million years, but what have you built? What have you created? What have you become? The elder responded with something like patience or perhaps pity. We have become survivors. That is enough. That must be enough. And if it is not, what if survival without living is no survival at all? The assembly stirred. This was not a question they were used to hearing. Most species came to them afraid, desperate, willing to accept any rules that would keep them safe. Humanity was different. Humanity asked questions. You speak like the young, the elder said. You speak like those who have not yet learned to fear. You will learn. All species learn eventually. Ambassador thought about Earth. She thought about human history. The wars, yes, but also the art, the music, the science. She thought about the pyramids and the moon landings. She thought about the dreams of reaching the stars that had driven humanity for centuries. Could they give all that up? Could they dim their lights, silence their songs, and hide in the dark forever? She knew the answer before she asked the question. The United Earth Parliament met in emergency session. Every nation, every leader, every voice that mattered gathered to hear Ambassador's report. She told them everything. The devourer, the conquered, the rules of silence, the choice they had to make. The debate lasted 3 days. Some argued for accepting the conquered's rules. Survival was better than extinction. Some argued for fighting, though they had no idea how to fight something that had destroyed 17,000 civilizations. Some argued for hiding, for running, for finding some corner of the universe where the devourer would never look. But one voice, a young scientist from a small country that had never mattered much in world politics, asked a different question. They said no energy weapons, she said. They said nothing about kinetic weapons. They said stay quiet, stay hidden. What if we could fight without being loud? What if we could strike without being seen? The room went quiet. Everyone looked at the young woman. She was nobody important. Her name was Maya Santos, and she studied physics at a university that most people had never heard of. But her question changed everything. The conquered has been hiding for 3 million years, Maya continued. They have technology we cannot imagine, but they never thought to fight. They never tried to kill this thing. What if that is because they forgot how? What if fear made them forget that sometimes the only way to survive is to make the thing that hunts you afraid of you instead? Ambassador looked at the young scientist. She saw something in Maya's eyes, not fear, not hope, something harder, something older. Determination. What exactly are you suggesting? Ambassador asked. Maya Santos smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. It was the smile of a species that had clawed its way up from the mud, that had survived ice ages and plagues and wars, that had never once accepted extinction as an option. I am suggesting, Maya said, that we build a weapon, the biggest weapon ever built, and that we show the galaxy what happens when you tell humanity to be quiet. The vote was unanimous. Humanity would not join the conquered. Humanity would not hide. Humanity would do what it had always done when faced with something bigger and stronger and older than itself. Humanity would fight. For 50 years, humanity lied to the galaxy. They dimmed their cities. They silenced their broadcasts. They built ships that moved quietly through space, leaving no trails. When conquered observers came to check on them, they found a species that had accepted its place in the quiet galaxy. Humanity had learned to fear. Humanity had learned to hide. At least that was what the observers saw. What they did not see was Mercury. The planet closest to the sun had always been useless to humanity. Too hot, too small, too close to the burning star that gave life to Earth. No one wanted Mercury. No one cared about Mercury. That was exactly why humanity chose it. Maya Santos was 63 years old when construction began. She had spent her life preparing for this moment, designing something that the galaxy had never seen. Something that broke no rules because the conquered had never imagined anyone would build it. Not the small that human ships sometimes carried, not the weapons that could destroy asteroids or punch holes in enemy vessels. This was something else entirely. This was of the size of a small moon. They hollowed out Mercury over 20 years. Millions of workers, robots, and machines tore the planet apart from the inside, building the weapon in the empty space they created. The outer shell of Mercury remained intact, looking exactly like it always had. Hot, dead, boring. Inside was humanity's answer to 3 million years of fear. They used Mercury's iron core as its power source. Massive generators converted the planet's magnetic field into energy, storing it in batteries the size of mountains. The barrel ran through the entire planet, a tunnel of perfect electromagnetic coils that could accelerate any object to 70% of the speed of light. 70% of the speed of light, fast enough that anything hit by the projectile would simply cease to exist. The projectiles themselves were simple, tungsten rods, each one the size of a skyscraper, incredibly dense and incredibly hard. No explosives, no energy weapons, just metal moving faster than anything in the galaxy had ever moved before. The beauty of it, Maya Santos explained to her team, is that it breaks no rules. Kinetic weapons are allowed. The conquered never banned them because they never imagined anyone would build something like this. They think small. They think quiet. They forgot that sometimes the simplest weapons are the most powerful. The conquered did not discover Project Prometheus for 47 years. When they finally found out, it was too late. Ambassador Wei had died of old age 10 years earlier. Her granddaughter had inherited her position and her determination, but was not a diplomat. She was an admiral. She had spent her entire life preparing for the day when humanity would stop hiding. When the conquered summoned her to Station Harmony to explain the weapon, she went willingly. She stood before 12,000 species, just as her grandmother had stood 50 years before. But she did not stand as a student. She stood as something new. She stood as a threat. "You have broken the rules," the elder said. Its crystalline body flashed with anger, the first strong emotion any human had ever seen from the ancient species. "You have built a weapon of destruction. You have endangered every species in this galaxy. You must destroy it immediately." Admiral smiled. It was the same smile Maya Santos had smiled 50 years ago, the smile of a species that did not know how to surrender. "We have broken no rules," she said. "Show me where in your laws it says we cannot build a kinetic weapon. Show me where it says we cannot move a piece of metal very fast. You banned energy weapons because they are loud. This weapon is silent. The projectile makes no sound in space. It releases no energy until impact. It is invisible, undetectable, and unstoppable." The assembly erupted in chaos. Species that had not spoken in centuries screamed at each other. The ambassador wept, her wings beating helplessly against the air. The roared so loud that the station shook. Admiral waited for silence. When it came, she spoke again. "You have hidden for 3 million years. You have watched 17,000 civilizations die. You have technology that could reshape the universe, but you use it only to hide. Ships that fold space, energy shields that could protect worlds, machines that could build anything. And you do nothing with them. You hide. You wait. You hope that the monster will pass you by." "We survive," the elder insisted. "Survival is everything." "Survival is nothing if you are already dead inside." Admiral stepped forward, her voice rising. "We have studied the Devourer. We know what it is. It exists in multiple dimensions at once. Energy weapons cannot hurt it because they only affect normal space. But kinetic energy is different. Kinetic energy transfers across dimensions. When something moving at 70% of light speed hits the Devourer, it will feel it in every dimension it exists in." The assembly fell silent. This was new. This was something they had never considered. "You mean to fight it," whispered. The ambassador looked at Admiral with something new in her eyes, not fear, not anger. "Hope. We mean to kill it," Admiral replied. "Or die trying, but we will not hide. We will not wait. We will not spend the next 3 million years cowering in the dark while something hunts us like animals." The elder made a sound that might have been a laugh. "You will fail. You will die. And when you die, you will attract the Devourer to this region of space. You will doom us all." Admiral nodded. "Perhaps, but perhaps not. Perhaps we will do what no species has done in 3 million years. Perhaps we will make the Devourer afraid." She turned to leave. At the door, she stopped and looked back at the assembly. 12,000 species, ancient and powerful and paralyzed by fear. "We are going to fire the weapon," she said. "We are going to make noise, the biggest noise this galaxy has ever heard. And when the Devourer comes, we will be waiting. You can hide in your shadows and watch us die, or you can remember what it felt like to have courage. The choice is yours." She left them sitting in silence. 3 months later, the Mercury fired for the first time. The projectile crossed the solar system in minutes. It hit a rogue planetoid in the outer reaches of the system, and the impact released more energy than 1,000 nuclear bombs. The sound of that impact, translated into electromagnetic waves, echoed across the galaxy. And in the galactic core, something ancient and hungry turned its attention toward the small yellow star where the noise had come from. The Devourer was coming. Humanity was ready. The Devourer moved slowly through the galaxy. It had no need to hurry. Time meant nothing to a creature that had existed before the stars were born. It drifted between dimensions, feeding on the energy that leaked through the cracks in reality, waiting for something loud enough to be worth the effort of hunting. The impact on the rogue planetoid was very loud indeed. For the first time in 3 million years, the Devourer changed course. It turned away from its slow patrol of the galactic core and began moving toward the source of the noise, toward the small yellow star, toward Earth. The conquered watched in horror. Their sensors tracked the creature's movement, and they sent warnings to every hidden station, every quiet world, every species that had learned to fear. The Devourer is moving. The humans have doomed themselves. Prepare to flee. On Earth, humanity prepared to fight. Admiral stood in the command center built deep beneath the surface of Mars. Around her, Thousands of officers and scientists worked at their stations, monitoring the Devourer's approach, calculating trajectories, preparing the weapon. The atmosphere was tense but not fearful. These were people who had spent their entire lives preparing for this moment. "Time to arrival?" Admiral asked. 18 months, Admiral. It is moving faster than any previous recorded approach. "It is hungry," Maya Santos said. The old scientist was 113 years old now, kept alive by medical technology that had been developed in the quiet years of hiding. She had refused to die until she saw her weapon fired in anger. "It has not had a proper meal in a very long time. We must look delicious to it." Admiral smiled. "Good, let it come hungry. Hungry creatures make mistakes." The ambassador had come to Earth against the orders of the conquered. She was not alone. Thousands of individuals from hundreds of species had their governments to stand with humanity. Most of them expected to die. None of them cared. "My people have forgotten what courage looks like," said. "We have hidden so long that we think hiding is the only option. But watching humanity prepare to fight something that has destroyed 17,000 civilizations, I remember what we used to be. Before the fear, before the silence, we used to be brave too." "You still are," Admiral replied. "You are here." "I am one. My government has ordered all to flee this region of space. They say you have doomed us all." "Maybe we have, but maybe doom was coming anyway. At least this way we face it standing up." The months passed. The Devourer grew closer. Humanity watched and waited and prepared. The creature was not like anything that existed in normal space. It had no fixed shape, no solid form. When sensors tried to track it, they showed only absence, a hole in reality, a place where the universe simply stopped existing. It was darkness that moved, emptiness that hungered, nothing that somehow was something. Scientists studied it endlessly, trying to understand what they were facing. They learned that the Devourer existed in multiple dimensions at once. Most of its mass, if mass was even the right word, existed in places that human instruments could not detect. Only a small part of it manifested in normal space. That was the part that fed. That was the part that destroyed worlds. "It is like an iceberg," Maya Santos explained. "What we see is just the tip. The rest is hidden in dimensions we cannot see or touch. Energy weapons only affect the tip. They cannot hurt what we cannot see." "But kinetic energy is different," Admiral said. "Kinetic energy transfers across all dimensions. When our projectiles hit the visible part of the Devourer, the force will spread to the invisible parts too. For the first time in its existence, it will feel pain in every part of itself." The day came. The Devourer entered the solar system. It was larger than Jupiter. It blocked out the stars as it moved, a vast shadow that swallowed light and hope. The conquered watched from their hidden stations, recording what they believed would be humanity's final moments. On Mars, Admiral gave the order. On Mercury, they came to life. The first projectile left the barrel at 70% of the speed of light. It crossed the distance to the Devourer in seconds. It hit. The impact was invisible to the naked eye. There was no explosion, no flash of light. Just a tungsten rod the size of a skyscraper, transferring all of its kinetic energy into something that had never been touched before. The Devourer screamed. It was not a sound that traveled through space. It was something that echoed through dimensions, a cry of surprise and pain that every psychic species in the galaxy felt in their minds. 3 million years of silence, broken by a single moment of agony. The second projectile hit, the third, the fourth. In 49 seconds, the Mercury fired 317 times. Each shot was precisely calculated, each impact designed to hit a different part of the creature's impossible body. The projectiles did not just cause pain. They did something that the Devourer had never experienced. They made it afraid. The creature tried to flee. It pulled its form together, attempting to fold back into the dimensions where nothing could touch it. But the impacts came too fast, too hard. Each hit spread energy through every part of its existence. Each hit reminded it that it was not invincible. For 3 million years, the Devourer had hunted without opposition. It had destroyed civilizations that begged for mercy. It had silenced worlds that tried to hide. It had never met anything that fought back. It had forgotten that pain existed. Now it remembered. The creature retreated. It pulled back from the solar system, leaving behind pieces of itself that it could not take. Fragments of its being, torn loose by the impacts, floating in space like the blood of a wounded god. Admiral watched it go. She did not celebrate. This was not victory. This was just the first battle. "Track it," she ordered. "I want to know where it goes. I want to know if it will come back." The Devourer fled toward the galactic core, moving faster than it had ever moved before. It was hurt. It was confused. It was afraid. And across the galaxy, 12,000 species watched in stunned silence. The thing that had haunted them for 3 million years, the monster that had made them hide in the dark, had been wounded, had been driven away, had been made to feel fear. By a species that had only known about the stars for 300 years. The first messages began arriving within hours, not from the conquered governments who were still paralyzed by shock, from individuals, from rebels, from the brave and the desperate and the hopeful. "How did you do it? Can you teach us? Please help us fight." Admiral read the messages, thousands of them, millions, an entire galaxy waking up from a nightmare that had lasted 3 million years. "What do we tell them?" asked. Admiral looked at the hope in her ancient eyes. "We tell them the truth," she said. "We tell them that the fight has just begun, and we tell them that if they want to be free, they will have to learn to be brave again." The galaxy had been quiet because it was afraid. Now it was quiet because it was listening. Listening to humanity. The fragments of the Devourer floated in the darkness beyond Neptune. They were small compared to the creature they had come from, but each fragment was still larger than a mountain. They pulsed with strange energy, glowing with colors that human eyes had never seen before. Admiral sent ships to capture them. The conquered screamed warnings across every communication channel. "Do not touch them. Do not study them. Do not anger the Devourer further." But humanity had stopped listening to warnings. Maya Santos led the research team personally. At 113 years old, she was too frail to travel to the capture site, so she watched through screens as her people brought the first fragment into a containment facility on Pluto. "It is still alive," she said, studying the readings. "Not conscious, not intelligent, but alive, like a piece of skin cut from a body, still connected to the whole somehow." "Can we kill it?" Admiral asked. "Yes," Maya smiled her old, dangerous smile. "Yes, I believe we can, and when we do, the rest of the creature will feel it die." They worked for 3 years. Scientists from Earth and from 100 other worlds, species that had their governments to help humanity, all of them focused on a single goal: understanding the Devourer, finding its weaknesses, learning how to kill something that had lived since before the stars. They learned that the creature was old, not millions of years old, billions. It had existed when the universe was young, when the first stars were forming, when life was just beginning to emerge. It had evolved to feed on the energy that life produced. Radio waves, heat signatures, electromagnetic radiation. All of it was food. But it had a weakness. The same thing that made it so dangerous, existing in multiple dimensions at once, also made it vulnerable. Its consciousness was spread across those dimensions. Heard it in enough places at once, and that consciousness could be disrupted, damaged, destroyed. "We need more," Admiral announced. "Not one, hundreds, thousands. We need to be able to hit it from every direction at once. We need to make sure it cannot escape." The galaxy answered. The War first had returned to her people not to flee but to fight. She had shown them the recordings of the battle. She had told them about the hope she had seen on Earth. And slowly, painfully, they remembered what they had been before the fear. They began building on their hidden moons. The followed. The giant creatures had once been warriors, before 3 million years of hiding had taught them to be small. Now they remembered the old songs, the battle hymns their ancestors had sung. They began to build. Even the elders, ancient and cautious, could not ignore what had happened. A debate raged through their crystalline councils for months. In the end, the young ones won. They would not attack, but they would help. They shared their knowledge of folding space, of building ships that could move without leaving traces. They taught humanity and its allies how to prepare for war without attracting attention. The galaxy armed itself, quietly, carefully, but steadily. 10 years after the first battle, the fragment on Pluto stopped glowing. Maya Santos, now 123 and barely alive, watched as the last light faded from the alien flesh. "It is dead," she whispered, "truly dead. We killed a piece of a god." She died 3 days later, smiling. Across the galaxy, the Devourer felt the fragment die. It felt pain and loss, and something it had not felt in billions of years: anger. It began to move toward the solar system once more. But this time, it was not hunting. It was seeking revenge. Admiral was 78 years old now. Her hair was white, her body was tired, but her mind was as sharp as ever. She had spent 10 years preparing for this moment. She had built an army. She had armed a galaxy. She was ready. "All stations report," she ordered. The responses came from across the solar system. Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, and a dozen moons. Platforms, each one capable of firing hundreds of rounds per minute. Human stations, and stations built by species that had never fought anything in 3 million years. And beyond the solar system, hidden in the quiet spaces between stars, more stations waited. Thousands of them, millions of projectiles, an entire galaxy armed and ready to fight. The Devourer entered the solar system at full speed. It was larger now than it had been before. It had fed in the galactic core, growing stronger, preparing for revenge. It filled the sky, blocking out the stars, a shadow that covered worlds. Admiral gave the order. Every station fired at once. The projectiles came from every direction, not hundreds, not thousands, millions. Tungsten rods and iron spears and crystalline lances, all moving at 70% of the speed of light, all hitting the Devourer at the same moment. The creature screamed, not in surprise this time, in agony, in terror. It tried to flee into other dimensions, but the impacts followed it. Kinetic energy does not care about dimensions. Kinetic energy transfers everywhere. Every part of the Devourer, in every dimension it existed in, felt the pain at the same time. The barrage lasted for 1 hour. When it ended, the creature that had haunted the galaxy for 3 million years was gone, not retreating, not hiding. Dead. The silence that followed was different from any silence the galaxy had known. It was not the silence of fear. It was not the silence of hiding. It was the silence of peace. The silence of a universe that no longer had to be afraid. Admiral stood before the Galactic Assembly 1 year later. She was 79 years old, and she knew she did not have much time left. But she had one more thing to do. "The Devourer is dead," she said. "But that is not the important thing. The important thing is what we do now. For 3 million years you hid, you survived, but you did not live. Now you can live again." She paused, looking at the 12,000 species gathered before her. Many of them were crying. Many of them were cheering. Some were too stunned to do anything but stare. "We do not know if there are more creatures like the Devourer. We do not know what other dangers wait in the dark. But we know one thing now. We know that we do not have to face them alone. We know that we do not have to hide." She smiled, and for a moment she looked like her grandmother. like the diplomat who had first stood before this assembly and refused to accept fear as the only option. The galaxy was quiet because it was afraid. Then it was quiet because it was waiting. Now it can be loud again. Now it can be bright. Now it can be alive. She raised her hand, and the assembly fell silent one last time. My name is, I am human, and I am proud to welcome you all to the future. The cheering started slowly, but it grew. Species that had not made noise in millions of years roared and sang and shouted. The silence was over. The fear was over. And somewhere, in the quiet spaces between stars, the universe listened to the sound of hope. Humanity had taught the galaxy to fight. Now they would teach it to live. The silence after thunder was not empty. It was full of possibility.